If you would, for us for a few minutes, I just want to bring in Aaron Cohen for a little analysis. We've talked to Trey Yings, we've talked to our national security chief correspondent Jennifer Griffin, and our senior political correspondent Brett Baer. To you, Aaron Cohen, I'm wondering what you think of this. Jennifer said it's significant. It was a limited attack. Is there such thing as a limited attack when one country goes after another country?
I agree. I do think there's such thing as a limited attack. Israel coined that term many years ago as multi-layered. So I feel like Israel put the word out on the street that they weren't going to do anything until after Passover. That's a very important holiday in Israel. And I think they used the confusion and the chatter of, hey, we won't do anything until then. And I think what we're seeing right now, based on reports from several semi-formal news sites in Iran, I believe that what we're seeing here is in this first piece would be selective airstrikes, which, let me tell you, Trace, is really interesting. Israel's Air Force has a lot of AI integrated into it, and they're capable of striking Iran from outside of Iranian airspace, which is why there might be chatter of attacks that are happening over Iraq and Syria. So they can get those missiles from those F-35s, those F-15s, in coordination with other special assets on the ground, into Isfahan, which has that nuclear piece that we discussed, which is a big deal to Israel. Israel took out, just as Trey reported, Yingst, the nuclear scientist who Israel took out in 2020. By the way, they started tracking him in 2007. It's a big deal with that nuclear program. So Isfahan is definitely within Israel's optics. But there's also another piece that I'm hearing from one of my friends in Israel, which is the airport in Isfahan houses the 8th Tactical Air Wing for the Iranian Air Force. And there's several squadrons of F-14s that are stationed there. So I think Israel might be laying the groundwork for something bigger. They want to start to close the traps so that if they continue to pursue more layers, they're going to keep planes from being able to get off the ground, and they're going to keep that Air Force suppressed so they can progress.
Just so we're clear here, you think that before Iran has any kind of a chance to retaliate, that Israel might strike again in some capacity?
I think that we're going to see more of this. I don't think that this is going to be a one-shot pony. I think they're laying down some foundation work to really start digging in and doing some big work. It's a big thing that Iran did by sending 350 missiles into Israel. Israel didn't take that lightly. The game changed. And so now Israel's saying, how do we get to all those batteries? But most importantly, how do we get to that nuclear reactor? That's Israel's #1 threat. So let's start to prep the ground so that as we conduct more operations, let's take this in pieces, though, and then therefore they can kind of adjust and expand accordingly as needed. But I think we're seeing here the beginning stages of a potentially larger operation.
Larger operation. The syntax changes a little bit, Aaron. When you talk about larger operation, does larger operation mean war? I mean, that's what everybody's asking now. Does larger operation, does Iran retaliating, does Israel retaliation, does that mean that we are stepping very closely toward war?
We're getting closer to war, but I want to frame it a little bit differently. This is what we're still in the low intensity conflict phase. Although there was a monster barrage of missiles and suicide drones fired at Israel a couple of days ago, I don't really believe that was an absolute monster flex, if you will, for lack of a better term, from Iran. I think it was a posturing in the Middle East. We know the strength card that the Middle East needs to play. That beating of the chest, but Israel's not playing around at this point. But without that multi-layered Iron Dome program with the arrows and the magic wand system and the short-range system, Israel would have been, thousands of Israelis could have ended up being killed. So although Iran was posturing, Israel is not. I don't think we're at war yet, but I believe that we are at the trickle stages of a low-intensity conflict with Iran. And that's what these terror groups like to do. They like that low burn, that slow kindle. Question is Israel really going to step it up? I think we're seeing the beginning stages of what could potentially, like Jennifer Griffin said, intensify more over the hours or coming days.
For those who never fought in IDF, for those who are not military generals like me and much of our audience, when you say low burn, what's the difference between a low burn war and an all-out war that involves other nations potentially?
Good question, Trey. So low-intensity conflict is kind of the general way of looking at a counterterrorism style war. It's very similar to Vietnam. It's guerrilla style. You've got small unit tactics. A high-intensity conflict would be what we saw in Iraq operation, the first Iraq war, or deploying to Afghanistan, where we start moving in large numbers, thousands of troops. Operation Enduring Freedom, those would be high-intensity conflicts. Actual war, where we're taking large bodies of troops, tanks, helicopters, airplanes, and we're going in there for into a theater for the purpose of being able to either topple a regime, take out a Saddam Hussein, and in this case, I think we're still at the low-intensity conflict, but we're seeing it unravel in the air via selective airstrikes. And I go back to Israel's really, really incredible shell dog unit. They've been all over Gaza for the last 6 months. That's Israel's JTAC unit, or Joint Tactical Controller Unit. And these are the guys who can get on the ground. It's a Tier 1 asset trace. They can infiltrate into enemy territory, commando-level reconnaissance capabilities. And they'll work in tandem with those F-15s, and specifically those F-35s. Wouldn't be surprised if they were working with those F-35s to take down those 350-plus missiles and drones that were fired into Israel. And those assets can infiltrate enemy territory undetected, to be able to work with those missiles to get really, really high-end selectivity for where those shots are going to go. It's a big, important piece of Israel's Air Force, and they're incredible. So I wouldn't be surprised if those operatives are sprinkled in around this.
This comes from the Associated Press. The dateline here is Dubai, United Arab Emirates. The quote is, Iran fires air defense batteries in several provinces. The state-run IRNA news agency reports without elaborating. So Iran is apparently trying to either protect itself. That sounds like the assessment here.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably a very fair assessment. So Iran is going to go into a defensive posture right now. They're going to start upping their air defense capabilities to try and take down any of these Israeli fighter jets that are coming in for these hyper-focused airstrikes. And they're going to, and Israel's now, you know, this is a high-end gunfight is how I like to look at this. When you've got two forces, and one's coming at the other and the other's defending, it's whoever's more aggressive and hits straighter is going to win. And so Israel right now, real selective. Iran trying to probably take out those F-15s and those F-35s. Israel knows better. They'll stay out of that Iranian airspace as long as they can. But again, like Jennifer reported, I think that we're going to start to see more of a drip escalation here. Don't think we're going to go to war yet. I wouldn't call it that. We're in a higher low-intensity conflict, for lack of a better way of explaining it. It's just unfolding in the air. But Esfahan, where the nuclear program lives, go ahead.
Yeah.